warm welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And today's show is 3 Times a Quaker, which captures the life of an English former footballer who played for Middlesbrough, Liverpool, Norwich City, a local club to me here, of course, in Norfolk, Sunderland, Swansea City, Sheffield Wednesday, as well as top division clubs FC Metz in France, Mazda in Japan, and Jerez club Deportivo in Spain. During his 2-year spell at Liverpool, he helped them win the First Division twice. He made 49 appearances in total between 1982 and 1984. Also in 1984, he received the European Cup Winners' Medal as a substitute when Liverpool won the European Cup in Rome. He was a member of the 1982 UEFA European Under-21 Championship winning England team, Under-21 team, of course. Yes, folks, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome on the show David Hodgson. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you so much indeed. Do I address you as Lord Russell or just address you as Russell?
Well, my branding's Lord Russell, but you can address him as Russell, David, no problem at all.
Okay, the Lord might
Keep
come
it
out
straight.
in advance.
Not
Well,
a
look,
problem
thank
at
you so
all.
much for inviting me. Really looking forward to this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. It's an absolute pleasure. It really is. And when I looked into your background and your life to produce this script, really is a wonderful story. So let's get at it, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant. So, David, at the start of your professional career, you nearly signed for Bolton Wanderers, who invited you for a trial and offered you a 2-year apprentice contract, actually, followed by a 2-year professional contract. But Middlesbrough got wind of this and very quickly came in with a 2-year apprentice contract, and you signed for Middlesbrough. So what was the defining moments that made you sign for Middlesbrough rather than Bolton?
To be honest with you, it was one of those moments in life as well, which I've never forgotten. I've also carried it on many
Mm,
occasions with other people, is that when the opportunity came with Bolton, obviously at that age, all those years ago, to get offered an apprenticeship and a guaranteed professional, it
yes.
was pretty unique at the time, to tell you the truth. And then, of
Mm,
course, you get the 2-year option at Middlesbrough, which is basically a 2-year apprenticeship. And I went to my father and asked him, what do I do? Which one should I take? And his words were dead simple. Well, if I tell you which one to take and it goes wrong, you'll blame me for the rest of your life. So I went off what my heart was telling me. And my heart was telling me Middlesbrough Football Club. I've always followed my heart. I've never followed my head, which has probably cost me in some things in life, but I followed my
mm,
heart. And the reason being that is when I went down to Middlesbrough for training, and obviously the apprentices at the time was like Stan Cummins, Peter Johnson, Charlie Bell, lads like that who I just sort of had a rapport with more. Little Stan Cummins as well. He was probably the one most influential for taking me there. Billy Wolf, also another
mm.
very good friend from the northeast of England, and it was only because of this bond in terms of maybe it sounds as daft as it sounds, it was Middlesbrough, but Sunderland Football Club, because little Stan was a big Sunderland fan, David Armstrong was a big Sunderland fan. So these people made me feel welcome, and that's the reason why I opted to take the gamble of a 2-year apprenticeship and not a 4-year potential deal at Bolton Wanderers. Yeah.
Oh, great story, and very well said too. And your father was actually very, very right, wasn't he, to say, if I make the decision for you or explain to you which club to go for when it goes wrong, you would have blamed your father, wouldn't you?
Of
There's
course
no
you will.
doubt about that.
Is it,
Yeah.
it would be the most natural thing to do. Um,
Yes, I
quite
agree.
to turn around and say, well, you told me that, and you would use that as an excuse. And I didn't have an excuse. The bottom line was it was on my shoulders. I made the decision, and
Yeah.
Middlesbrough is where it started.
Fantastic. So you signed for Middlesbrough in 1978 and had 4 years at Middlesbrough, finally making your first team debut against Bristol City in 1981. Now at Ayresome Park, there was a part of the ground called the Chicken Run. I do remember this actually, which was an area at Ayresome Park where you could get some stick from the home supporters. I understand you needed to make a good impression on that day, so you clashed with Norman Hunter. Oh, remember him at Leeds, Norman Break Your Legs Hunter. Fantastic. Yes, Norman Hunter, who was in that infamous Leeds United 1970 side. So tell us more, David, about your debut and your clash with Norman, I'm going to break your legs Hunter.
Yeah, well, obviously, Norman being a northeast lad as well, as it happens, from Burgley, which
Mm,
is no more than a mile or two from. So just quickly going back there, I signed for the Borough in 76. Obviously, 78 is when you became a professional. But I
yes.
started an apprentice at 76, and obviously 2 years leading up to the point when I made my debut at 18. But yeah,
Brilliant.
Bristol City was my starting debut. I'd already came on against QPR and Forest as a substitute in theory, but that was my first start in the starting 11 at the Borough. And there was a coach at the time, an old gentleman who originally worked alongside Big Jack, and I called Jim, an old guy called Jimmy Greenhoff, not the Greenhoff brothers from Man U, I mean. And he just, listen, old senior pros or old coaches in theory, they know what to say to kids.
Of
Okay.
course they do.
And for him to pull me to one side and say, listen, you have to make your mark today in front of the chicken run. Didn't say you have to make your mark in terms of having a great performance in front of a home crowd. He basically made the point of the chicken run. And of
Mm.
course, at what point can you do that? And it only happened to be that a ball happened to be played up in the air very, very, very early on in the game. And something in my head triggered and said, elbow Big Norman. So which is then I've gone up and obviously to tell you the truth, I clattered him with the elbow. He probably was never ever expecting it, especially from a young kid, and
Mm.
especially in who he was as well. I mean, and to be honest, yeah, I caught him flush on, and he hit the ground, and to be honest, he was down there for a little while. Bit of a
Mm.
scuffle took place. Jerry Gow, I remember Jerry Gow coming up, grabbed me by the throat, which you could do back in them days without getting sent off, basically saying you'll not get through the 90 minutes. And
Mm.
to be honest with you, Norman eventually picked himself up. Do I think he could have probably done me at some point in that game? Potentially,
Mm.
because of who he was, what he was, his experience. He could have waited for that one moment. He didn't. Whether it didn't happen, I'm not too sure. But
Mm.
that was the moment when, i.e., the chicken run took Hodgie into their hearts and made my life a lot. And I always had an incredible rapport with that end of the ground, you know. Yeah.
What a fantastic story. It really is a fantastic story. And all, of course, on your debut, really, as a start in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Incredible. There was also the sequel when Middlesbrough played Bristol City away in the last match of the season. When the game started, Norman Hunter came over and said, right, you little, and I'll say it,
Yeah,
shit. I
yeah.
don't like swearing usually on this show. Here's the deal. You slow down and I won't break your legs. And you famously replied, and I quote, here's my deal. I won't, you will not break my legs and I won't go down. True to form that Norman, I'll break your legs, Hunter, the story around all of this. So how did it all end up on the pitch, David? Some respect,
Be
I
honest,
understand, from Norman Hunter.
it's one of those moments which obviously I still remember to this day, and I remember this because of it being Norman Hunter. Okay.
Yes.
Um, we actually played Bristol City. The season ended on the Saturday,
Mm,
and I'm not too sure what the reason was behind the fact that Middlesbrough's game was played on the Tuesday, which was technically 3 days after the entire season had closed down.
yes.
Yeah. So Norman, a kickoff, literally, he came straight up alongside me and basically said, "Right, listen, here's the deal. Like you've just tried to point out, you don't run around today, and I won't break your leg." And for my reply was, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll run around because I'm that quick. You're not going to catch me, and you're going to break my leg either." So at the end of the day, that's how it panned out. But the
Mm,
lovely thing was, at the end of the game, he came up, put his arms around me, hugged me, give me some lovely words like, "Listen, you've done great tonight, son." Blah 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 blah
yeah,
blah.
brilliant.
And yeah, and it's just one of those moments that you'll never forget.
Wonderful. So I had total respect for you, didn't he, really, David, on the pitch? Knew you
I
were a good
think it was
player?
probably the Northeast connection, truthfully, or maybe at that
Yes.
point I'd already had a season technically in the first division, which was then the old first division, not as in the Premier days to now. And
Yes.
I'm pretty certain when kids are making the mark, I'm only taking that I've been manager of a team, and when youngsters make the mark, or the manager's aware of it, and other players are aware. And I think Norman probably thought, you know what, this kid's got a chance, and yeah, it was lovely, it was wonderful, yeah.
Fair play to him. I mean, David, you also enjoyed a good relationship with your manager at Middlesbrough, namely John Neal, very famous, of course, John Neal. And John Neal became very famous at Chelsea after leading Middlesbrough in 1981. So please tell us more about John Neal as a man, because he was a really quiet, unassuming gentleman, wasn't he, as well?
To be honest with you, the Northeast, when you look back, have been phenomenal for producing managers.
Mm,
Howard Kendall. Bob
Oh
Paisley,
wow, yes. Of
Big
course.
Jack, Cloughie, John Neal, and listen, Stan Anderson, and so many more from the
Yeah.
northeast of England. And John, when he arrived, was a very, very quiet man of very few words, to tell you the truth, but he took a
Mm,
lot of the kids under his wing.
mm,
Myself, Mark Proctor, Craig Johnston, and really made us feel that we were so important to the starting, not the starting 11, but more important to the club, but more importantly,
yes.
we needed on a Saturday afternoon. And all three of us, and others I may add, Billy Askew, Peter Johnson, Charlie, lots of lads made the debut in them. We we welcomed that praise off him, and all of us fed off it in theory.
Yes.
We tend to run that extra mile because of the gaffer giving us, those words of praise prior to games, and how he believed in us. And yeah, super guy. Should never have lost his job at that time at
Mm,
Middlesbrough. I think he probably should have stayed another season. And then, for which case, I don't know where the club would have gone. Would we have stayed in the league? Potentially, yes, I
mm.
would have thought so. But yeah, he opted and obviously left, and he ended up getting the Chelsea job. Mm.
Yes, indeed he did, and did very well at Chelsea too, didn't he? So
Very good.
just goes to show what a fantastic coach manager he was,
Yeah.
and coach and manager of players too, getting the players to play for him. Wonderful, wonderful man.
What's
Fantastic
the thing
career.
that probably doesn't exist in today's game as such, where
Mm,
the players get this, bond with the manager. I don't know
yes.
why. Maybe it's society's changed, but in those days, that's how it was. That's you had this bond with your manager, especially as a youngster, and you fed off. That's what
Yeah.
made you a better player on a Saturday afternoon because you were working for your club and your manager.
Absolutely spot on. And also in 1982, you were part of the England under-21 side that won the European Championships,
Yeah.
beating West Germany in the final 5-4 on aggregate, because in those days it was a two-legged final, wasn't it? To
Yeah.
become the European champions for the first time. So please tell us more about your experience in this competition and becoming a European champion for England. Fantastic thing to
Because,
achieve.
the record says that under 21 side was the first team to ever win anything after the 66 World Cup team, I believe.
That's true. Yeah, it's
So,
true.
yeah, I heard that stat. I never really delved into it to see if it was actual fact. But listen, the kids that were available back
Mm,
then, I sometimes look here and think, hold on here. Well, actually, I started in the first leg and come off with a knee injury, which I
yes.
half thought I wouldn't have recovered for and been able to be available for the second leg. But I think once the squad is named. So I was on the
Mm,
bench for the second leg, coming on and having a big. Well, actually, it was my creation of the goal for Paul Goddard won us the actual game. So that obviously that was extremely pleasing. But when you look back there, we had Adrian Heath, Gary Shaw, Clive
mm.
Allen, Paul Goddard, Justin Fashnew,
Oh, what a team.
Big Tomo from Coventry, Mark Haitley, and honestly, there was so many strikers available at that time. So in a way, I'm quite
Mm.
things don't sort of make me feel extremely proud as such. But when I look back and look at the players that I kept out of that starting 11 in theory
Mm.
for X amount of games, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with that for sure. But yeah, so the first leg obviously at Main Road,
Mm.
sorry, at Sheffield United's ground, Bramall Lane, we comfortably won. And going into the second leg, basically a draw was sufficient. Unfortunately, Lidbarski, who was then a German sensation, showed up on his home soil, and we were
Mm.
suddenly back to the point where they were going to win on away difference, goal difference. So I think it was maybe 30 minutes, 35 minutes in the second half. I went onto the pitch. I actually think I remember I potentially nearly gave a penalty away.
Oh
I
dear.
remember little Sammy Lee absolutely blast me. And Sammy was a teammate of mine from Liverpool at this point. But yeah,
Yes.
it was a penalty away, which it didn't happen, obviously. And then when maybe 5 or 6 months later, I got a throw in somewhere in my own half and went to the ball. Two defenders came with me. I let it go between my legs, turned them, and obviously they're out of the game. Made the dart towards the goal area. Paul Goddard was to the left, and to this day, thank God it was Paul as well, by the way, because
Yeah.
if the anything, he was a great finisher. So calm, very collective. And I remember rolling the ball across the face of the goal for me. I had a touch and dropped in the bottom corner. Game over. They would then have to score two to obviously to win the thing, and that was never going to happen at that stage in the game. So yeah,
Mm.
great. Great moment for England in theory. Okay, we beat
Yeah,
Germany, which is at the time 72.
absolutely.
66 team won against Germany. We beat Germany. We beat
Yep.
Wembley. We beat them on their home ground, which was a great achievement by an incredible group of players. Incredible group.
Absolutely, and of course that side you were in it was always seen as the feeder for the first, the senior national
Yeah.
side, isn't it? But of course, it never really produced anything, did it? I mean, I don't know why. I mean, probably some of the managers we had didn't exercise, um, you know, good conditions for the players, didn't choose the right side, the right players. I don't know, but
I don't know.
that,
I mean, I know you're going with the question now. When I look back at that team,
yeah,
you'd like to think comfortably, maybe, I don't know, at
yeah,
least half of them could have potentially broken into the full England squad as kids.
definitely.
I actually, I tell this is true fact as well. I remember for the 82, would it be 1982 World Cup or 1980? 70,
Uh,
70, 74, 78,
78,
82.
82, 82, yes.
I had to hand my passport into the FA. So I technically couldn't book my holidays until the squad was announced.
Yes.
And that's probably about as close as I got to the full national team. So I handed my passport in, had to wait, didn't get selected, obviously got my passport returned to me or whatever it may be. And then, of
Mm,
course, I've then went away on vacation. I went to America, actually. And
mm.
so at one point, I was maybe just on the verge of being called
Yes.
for the national team. But I look back, I think I'm trying to remember, I remember Paul Marner being one of the main strikers at the time.
Mm.
People like that who, to be honest with you, they were also at the top of the game at that point of their career, Yeah.
And of course, that England side then in '82 was a fantastic side. And I do remember it as well. It was out in Spain, I believe, wasn't it? The '82 World Cup, and England were the only side in history now to bowl out of the World Cup without losing a game.
Not losing a game,
Because
but
they,
not winning any.
because, yeah, well, they had two league structures, didn't they? And I think they won the first league structure, beating France in the opening game and convincingly winning that structure. And then they went up against Germany and I forget who the other side was now in the second league phase, drew both their games and went out on goal difference. So they didn't lose a match, but went out of the World Cup.
The
First
thing
time
is,
ever in history.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I would exist today. That's what, and saying I'm watching the
Yeah,
Women's World Cup right now, and there's about 50 teams involved, and it's like
absolutely.
absolutely
And I think it
pointless.
was Germany and Spain they got drawn. So it was a tough group in
Final.
that
Yeah.
second round. But there we go. That's life, isn't it? That's football.
Yeah.
Lots of chances I seem to remember as well against Germany. Didn't take them, and England came home.
Yeah,
But
seeing
there we
Hodgson
are.
should have been on the pitch.
Yeah, it's a shame you didn't go, wasn't it, David? Really, but you must have
Oh,
felt
of
really
course. Listen, I would have,
disappointed a bit. But of
yeah, I would have loved to have played for your
course
national
you would.
team. Of course, I mean that goes without saying. I think Bobby Robson once done a Northeast select team, especially, and I got
Yes,
selected for that at the time, which obviously I was privileged. So yeah, I was knocking on the
absolutely.
door, but just not the door, just didn't open. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. But then again, then in August 1982, you arrived at Liverpool as an England under 21 international and European champion, of course. So fantastic arrival. Seemingly having a bright future ahead in the game. A huge move, moving to what was one of the greatest football clubs in the world, who just kept winning everything at the time, didn't they? God, it's amazing. I mean, please tell us more about the Liverpool move. You must have been excited, nervous, and a little overawed, really. A big club.
I want to tell you the truth, and I've said this on
Yeah,
many occasions, and there's no point telling you anything other. At the time when I got asked to go, I said no.
right.
And going
That's an
back
honest
to
opinion.
the decision to join Middlesbrough as opposed to
Yes,
Bolton, it's in way similar terms. Liverpool is one where it's a decision made upon um, football related success, knowing if you go to a club
yes,
like that, blah blah. However, I was also very happy at Middlesbrough Football Club. Happiness takes a lot to be achieved.
yes, it
And
does.
I in my head thought, well, I've just signed a 4-year contract. Why do I need to leave Middlesbrough to go to Liverpool? I didn't, when I was
Mm,
a young kid saying I want to be a football player, I didn't, yeah, I hear these people, oh, I had this dream, that dream. I only had a desire to be a football player. What came for me was what it was going to be. I didn't
Yes.
think, oh, I want to play for England. Oh, I want to play in a cup. No, I just wanted to be a football player. And I was.
Mm,
And I wanted to be where I was happy. And I was happy. So why should I be forced, having just signed a 4-year deal, to be sold to Liverpool because Middlesbrough Football Club needed the transfer fee in order to keep the club going? And that was the
yes.
be all and end all of it. So on rejecting it in theory at first, um, Harold Shepherdson, who was England assistant manager in the '66 World Cup,
Mm,
who today would be classed as sporting director, was a
mm,
wonderful man. And he came and he sat and he spoke to me. And he was actually the one who drove me down to Liverpool. Um, so yeah, I was given this incredible opportunity. Everybody around me was saying, "You've got to go." My father was, etc., etc. But truthfully, in my
yeah.
heart, I would have really been happy if I hadn't been faced with that and was able to stay at Middlesbrough at the time. But okay,
Mm,
it wasn't meant to be. So this decision was made, and
yes.
of course, I take the chance to go to a club like Liverpool Football Club.
And what a chance too. And you did settle in nicely, of course, as well, scoring 4 goals in your first 6 games. That must have settled you in quite nicely for Liverpool. Flourishing alongside, and I've got to make these names loud, Kenny Dalglish and Ian Rush. I mean, crikey, you played a total of 37 matches in your first season, scoring 9 goals in total. What a start, David.
To be honest with you, that 9 goals is a shock, by the way, because I wasn't a goal scorer.
Mm,
And I probably
no?
would have played a hell of a lot more had it not been for one, a knee injury I picked up in a charity game on behalf of John Craggs at Middlesbrough Football Club. I went back to help to
Mm.
play this charity game and then getting done a knee ligament injury, which cost
Oh,
me
dear.
four or 5 games. Um, and then, of course, going to Liverpool, the history of players signing there tend to spend 1 year, 2 years in the reserves to learn
Mm.
the philosophy of Liverpool before you break into the first team. And there was not many, I don't think, who went. Kenny, obviously, Graham Souness, yeah, I know that Mark Ronson did, where they've come from a club to Liverpool and got in straight away. So I got off to a potentially a great start.
You
Um,
did.
9 goals is probably more. I scored probably more for Liverpool than I did for Borough in any one season. That's for sure.
Mm.
Uh, truthfully, to this day, I just don't understand how it happened that when Joe took over, Joe Fagan, and as you said, you have 39, 40 games, and I would have been on the bench and quite a few games away. So there was only 45 games a season. So I know I was on
Yeah.
the bench at least 4 or 5 of those games as well. So I was possibly in that starting 11 stroke 12 for probably 90% of the games. So I
Yes.
don't know where it went wrong that Joe felt that he had to go and sign Michael Robinson, who ended up being a very close friend of mine, and he's no longer with us.
Mm.
And he went out
Yes,
and signed
sadly.
Neal, and for some reason, my career at Liverpool sort of like was incredible, and it came to a complete stop. Uh, and to this day, I don't understand how that happened, but look, it did at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But what was it like playing alongside the greats such as Kenny Dalglish and Ian Rush? I mean, both prolific players, weren't they?
Yeah, but
Awesome.
see, what people see is people see the name Kenny Dalglish and people see the name Ian Rush.
Mm.
What they don't see is the actual human beings of what these guys are.
Yes.
They
Yes.
they they were as down to earth as
Mm.
you're going to find in any changing room. Kenny and I
Mm.
was very close with Rushy. We travelled in together regular. We both lived on what we called on the side of the water in the Wirral. So we
Mm.
we we end up being extremely good friends during that period of time. Kenny took me under his wing, and the fact is that everything that I needed to do in terms of when I was buying the house and all the stuff that goes with it, he literally helped with everything, everything.
That's incredible.
He sorted my boot deal out with Puma, etc., etc. I mean,
How decent is that?
that's just how he is as a human being.
Yeah,
So
wonderful.
people say that they're in awe of Kenny. Yes, don't get me wrong, and rightly so as a player, but as a person, he's just the same as everybody else, and if
Mm.
not even better because of how he is as a character. But yeah, so I never went. I didn't go in that change room, truthfully, and was in awe of anything. I just wasn't.
Mm.
Uh, I'd already played against them 2 or 3 times. I knew Graham Souness. I knew Craig Johnson. I knew Sammy Lee uh,
Yes.
from previous with England, etc. So I wasn't going in as a complete stranger. And yeah, it was pretty easy to settle in. Truthfully, it was, yeah.
Well, that's good to hear, and then you settled in very well at all, indeed. And Bob Paisley, of course, your manager at Liverpool, was very similar in many ways to John Neal, your previous manager at Middlesbrough. And I think you said at the time, and I quote, Bob was a very quiet gentleman and never said much in the dressing room before we went out, but very quietly under his breath, though, he might be muttering, "Get them effing beat." And that's all you heard. I mean, tell us more about Bob Paisley.
I mean, there's some Liverpool greats can tell you real stories about what Bob was like as a person.
Yes,
More so Kenny's documentaries on at the moment, and he speaks so highly of him.
fantastic.
Nobody could not say anything. But I'll tell you a little story with Bob, which was extremely
Mm,
funny. And
please do.
there was a reporter at the time called John Gibson, big reporter in the northeast of England, and he came down to do an interview with me. And I can picture it was yesterday. And I'm walking out from the change rooms to go and have the first session in the morning, and John Gibson was in the middle. Bob was to his right, and I was to his left. And he turned to Bob and said, or to the gaffer at the time, and said, "Well, Bob, how's Hodgie settled in?" And Bob Paisley's response was the following. He used to speak with a real strange North Geordie accent. "Well, John, let me tell you this." And I can't swear, but Bob used to swear terribly, by the way, I may add.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
He can go down that wing at 100 miles an hour. He can pick Rushy out, but yet he can't hit two sticks that don't move. So he killed me. So he basically said you can go down the line at 100 miles an hour, drop
Yeah.
it on Rushy's head like a pinpoint or whatever, but yet he cannot. He cannot hit the ball between two sticks that don't move, which probably is not the right thing to say in terms of giving somebody confidence. But I
Indeed.
just cried with laughter, and in
Yeah.
a way, it was so funny. But that's what he must have been thinking. So that must have been one of the things that Liverpool must have thought. We've got this kid here who can beat you for fun, can drop it
Mm,
on a knee on a sixpence back in the day.
mm,
But
mm,
yet, why hasn't he got that composure to finish or put a ball between two sticks that don't move? And
mm.
there's probably a valid point in that.
Yeah, quite
He
possibly
said it
so.
in
Yeah.
such a way, it was humorous, it was funny. When I
Yeah,
look back, it's
definitely.
probably one of those moments that kills you. Yeah.
But you did win the First Division League Championship in both your seasons at Liverpool in 1983 and 1984. Plus, you received the European Cup medal as a substitute when Liverpool won the European Cup in Rome that year. Liverpool won for a fourth time in a penalty shootout in the final against Roma. I mean, the game finished 1-1. I mean, this is what dreams are made of, aren't they, David?
The dreams are made of if you start or you get on that pitch.
Yes, of course.
Unfortunately, I'm trying to think. I
That's
think
us.
he got injured quite early on in the game, but they kept him on because of his presence and his voice, etc., etc. Kenny got
Yes.
injured late on in the game, and Michael went on. If I remember rightly, Michael might have gone on. Michael Robinson went on, yes. And that opportunity to be on the pitch didn't arise. Listen,
Mm,
I have no columns with that at the end of the day because what's important was that Liverpool Football Club won the game and
yes.
obviously lifted the trophy again. Being part of it was incredible. Would I've liked to
Yeah.
be on the pitch? Absolutely. You would love to say I actually physically played. I have to
Mm,
basically say I was part of. But yeah, it was incredible. And to beat Roma in Rome, in their
yeah.
backyard, in theory, and the
Yes,
winner.
it was their ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Alan did score. Alan Kennedy scored the winner. I mean, which club would throw up a left fullback that would score the winning goal for
Mm,
his team in two European Cup finals, which
mm,
Alan did,
exactly.
which is incredible. And obviously the win penalty was the main one. So no, listen, I was very, very fortunate to be part of a very, very, very good team, an incredible team, and be part of the celebrations that took place that night was like, wow, amazing, incredible. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as you said previously, when fellow striker Michael Robinson arrived at Liverpool, your game time was few and far between, and you demanded a move. Sunderland were interested, but boss Joe Fagan had told you to speak to him first before signing anything. Fair enough. However, you signed for Sunderland in 1984, and Joe Fagan was furious. So tell us about this episode. Apparently, you were going to replace Sammy Lee at some point.
Well, we finished the end of season tour and we came
Yeah.
back. And at this point, I'd already requested a transfer on 20 something occasions. Michael used to write them out for me, the transfer request,
Yes.
to whom it may concern, to the board of directors, to
Yeah.
the manager. He used to write them all out. Michael was super intelligent boy.
Mm.
And Joe pulled me in at Melwood training ground. I went to see him on my own. There was nobody there. We weren't training. And he said, listen, we've been thinking, we're looking to think could potentially change your position and make you a better player for it. And he brought up a midfield role, the right side. Well, in my opinion, Sammy Lee had that nailed down as good as anybody would ever have.
Mm.
In addition to that, like I pointed out at the very, very beginning of the interview, my desire was to play football and enjoy it. I never had in my mind that I would ever want to play football and take the role of a very, very good friend. And I
Mm.
sort of looked at it in that way. And I did reply to him, well, Sammy plays there. And he said, well, that's not your concern, which valid point. It wasn't my concern, but that's just how I was as a human. That's how I thought about it.
Yes.
So I basically didn't agree with what Joe was trying to tell me.
Mm.
So then obviously that was the end of the season. Then we had pre-season. Then we had the Charity Shield at Wembley against Everton. And I actually said to Joe 10, 15 minutes ago, you've got to put me on because we
Mm.
got beat that day. And I felt I could have had an impact in the game. I didn't get on. So when we returned from Wembley on the Monday morning, I went in to see him. It was for the first week of the season. And I said, Gaffer, you've got to let me go. And he actually said, where do you want to go? I said, Sunderland. I knew Sunderland wanted to sign me, okay? So
Yes, of
let's not
course.
beat about the bush, of course. So he basically got Sheila, which was his PA. Sheila, ring Sunderland. Sheila rang Sunderland. I'm sitting in the office. I can actually hear this. And then she said, Joe, or boss, she called him, boss, I've got Len Ashurst on the phone. And he went, Hodgie, take the call. So I looked at him and thought, that's not really for me to do. He said, you want to go to Sunderland? You take the call. So I took the call, spoke to Len. He asked me if I wanted to come. He knew I wanted to come. So that was a silly question,
Yeah.
of course, blah, blah, blah. So then I left at that and left the office. Joe said, right, go to training and I'll have a chat with you later on. Of course, no more mobile phones those days.
No, indeed.
I got home, there was a message on my answer machine. David, it's your gaffer, give me a call, please, when you pick this up. So I rang him up in the afternoon. Hi, Gaffer, Hodgie. Right, I'm allowing you to go to Sunderland. They want you there for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. But I want you to promise me you do not sign a contract until you talk with me properly.
Mm.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Anyway, as it happens, the meeting was changed from 9 o'clock till 7 o'clock in the morning. So I had to drive to Roker. I went to my parents' house. So I drove to Roker in the morning at 7
Wow.
and sat down with Len, agreed the figures. I actually took a 50% wage cut to go home. I had
Mm.
2 years left at Liverpool and I took a 2-year deal at Sunderland on half of my wage. So I wanted to go back home. Okay. Sunderland was
Mm.
my team as a kid. And I agreed to sign. Actually, I did sign, of course. And then I rang the gaffer and said, hi, gaffer, it's Hodgie. I've signed. And his only words were, you've just made the biggest mistake of your life, son, and I wish you well, and put the phone down.
Yeah.
Didn't explain why I'd made the biggest decision in life or anything of the sort. And truthfully, it went on to haunt me later on in life. I had a little bit of a concern about them comments. It sort of plagued me for a long time. But
Mm.
anyway, listen, I made the decision, I signed, And
exactly.
that was it. I was now a Sunderland player.
And you were apparently going to replace Sammy Lee, weren't you? I think that was the
Well, look,
gaffers,
that
you.
potentially was is part of the discussion because Joe made a point of saying that he would like to see me playing on the right. And the crazy thing was,
Mm,
he'd just gone to, but Sammy was England. Sammy
yes.
was in England international because he did not come to at the end of season trip to South Africa, where I played right side midfield in front of Mark Lawrence, who played right back for the
Mm,
3 games against Spurs. I think we 2 or 3 games against Spurs. And he came out with that comment and didn't make sense. But as it happens, little Sammy left about a year later.
mm.
I think Craig Johnston might have nailed down that part of the pitch, if I remember rightly.
I think you're right. It
So
was Craig
obviously,
Johnson.
whatever Liverpool were thinking at the time, reference to little Sammy, or what, I really don't know. He was a Liverpool player if there ever was one. He just never gave a ball away. Okay, Sammy wasn't quick. Was he
Mm,
tall? Could he get in the end? No, but he had incredible. Anyway, the bottom line was that was sort of thrown at me, and as far as I'm concerned, it was never, ever, ever going to happen. Never.
yeah. And so you probably made the right decision. Now, this is a funny story, I've got to say. When I dug this up on my research, it did make me chuckle. When you left Liverpool for Sunderland, Roy Evans sent you a glass trophy, and they'd inscribed on it, "Good luck, you old bugger," a term of endearment, I'm sure. But what was your view at the time to this interesting trophy? Have you still got it?
Actually, it wasn't. I've still got it. Actually, it wasn't a
Brilliant.
trophy. It was Liverpool had them made. It was a three
Yes.
case: European Cup, League, and Milk Cup on the actual plaque. And I got a call, and Liverpool were playing Newcastle, St James's Park, and I got asked if I could go to the game. I had to go to the changing room before the match, which I did, and they were waiting for me. The staff, Roy, Joe, Ronnie Moran, was Kenny man, it was Joe was a manager, Ronnie
Yes.
Moran, and Roy Evans, and they presented me in the changing room this big box thing, which I opened, decanter.
Yeah.
But the road on the top, which you point, good luck, you old bugger, goes back to a story when Liverpool went to Israel before the European Cup final, and an almighty fracas took off. Incredible in today's world, social media would have had a field day. But anyway, this particular incident took place, and there was a director called Mr. Moss, a wonderful gentleman, very well spoken, very articulate.
Mm.
We found ourselves, which was myself, Alan Kennedy, and Ian Rush, if I remember rightly, three of us, well past the point of no return when it come down to the alcohol aspect of it, on the floor, scrambling around outside of the hotel trying to get up. And then suddenly this gentleman appeared, which was Mr. Moss, director, and basically said, "In the time, my history of being at Liverpool Football Club, never have I witnessed such a incident as this." And at which point then I decided to try and grab a hold of his legs and claw my way up his body, and at the same time, pulling his trousers down. And when I did get up, I put my arm around him and said, "Moss, you old bugger, you're just like the rest of us."
Yep.
And that it stuck. Okay. It was just me being polite to this particular gentleman who was a director in the
Yes.
nicest way I possibly could. And Liverpool found great humour in that. And they wrote that on the box, which they give to me. And to be honest with you, I've still got it to this day.
Wonderful. Well, it's a fantastic story, isn't it? Really is a fantastic story, and shows the humour that can go around at football clubs,
Well, it
and those
shows,
days in
yeah,
particularly.
especially, we're talking about directors who have been at the Liverpool Football Club for 20, 30 years
Mm,
before my arrival, and witnessed some of the greatest players ever, like the Keegans and
yeah.
Tommy Smiths, etc., etc. But yet, for him to make a point of it, being part of the Liverpool Football Club, never witnessed anything like in his life. But
Mm,
then the next day, he was such an incredible gentleman. Hence the reason why
mm,
Liverpool seen the funny side of it, and hence the reason why
yeah.
they wrote that on the big trophy for me when I went to pick it up at St James's Park. Yeah.
Fantastic story. It really is an absolute legend of a story, that one, I've got to say. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And then, of course, at Sunderland, You was on the losing side to my local club here, of course, Norwich City, in the 1985 League Cup final, going down 1-0. A good cup run, but a disappointing final at Wembley for Sunderland.
At this point, Wembley, yeah, it was called the friendly final or something. I think it was something to do with the fact that there was an
I
incredible
think it
performance.
was, yeah,
Something it
definitely.
went down in history as something like that. The crazy thing was we'd actually beat Norwich a week earlier, by the way,
Yes.
3-1 at Carrow Road. And the it was 2 weeks earlier, yeah, a week earlier, I think. So
Mm,
the week leading up to Wembley, the team was selected.
mm,
We'd done all the work on the pitch. We were ready. Were we confident? Absolutely. On the back of just beating them, by the way. And then on the morning of the final, the morning of, or 2 hours before we due to leave, um, Len Ashurst, for what reason, I have no, even to this day, none of us ever found out. Basically went round the rooms, went to Colin West's room, who was starting, telling Colin that he wasn't even playing. He wasn't even on the bench. And obviously that quickly run round, in
yes.
the bedrooms. Gaffer's changed the team. West is not playing. He's not even on the bench.
Big
Uh,
mistake.
changed all the system, changed the shape of the team on the morning of the game, not 3 days prior, where we had time to accept it and come to terms with it.
Why did you
Basically,
do that, do you think?
we don't
That's
know.
disaster.
We honestly don't know. We have no idea why that happened whatsoever.
Mm,
So yeah, the morale took a dip, big dip on the morning of the game. It rolled on in the game. I should have scored after 20 seconds. I had a strike from about 5 yards into Norwich's half, and it beat Chris Woods, but it
mm.
hit the crossbar.
Oh,
We probably could have, we'd scored then. Obviously, that you never know what's going to happen. Could have changed
mm.
dramatically.
Could have
But
done.
honestly, we just didn't get there. We missed a penalty. And of course, who was our penalty taker? Colin West, who'd
Yeah.
scored 3 goals leading up to Wembley. Colin West. And then the penalty was bestowed on Clive Walker, who actually was a great finisher, I may add,
Mm.
and we missed it. So all of the bad vibes or the fate dealt its card that day to Sunderland Football Club. And actually, that was the demise of the club because we got relegated, if I remember rightly, and it took a long time for the club to recover.
Yeah, I do remember because as I'm a Chelsea fan, so I was actually on a Chelsea supporters coach
Yeah.
in the semi-finals up at Roker Park,
Yes.
and we went down 2-0. You beat Chelsea 2-0 on that evening, and I had that desperate, hurty, long trip back
Long
to
trip back.
Stamford Bridge,
Yes.
and and I thought in the final when you hit the bar and Clive Walker missed a penalty, I thought perhaps maybe someone somewhere was saying we had all that luck against Chelsea, it's all faded away now, but
But
Norwich
we
just
didn't
probably
have
played
luck
the right
against you.
game.
We battered Chelsea at
Yeah, I know you did.
Chelsea.
Absolutely. You
We
absolutely
battered
battered
Chelsea at
them.
Walker Park. I think it was 2-0 there. Well, I think we even won down,
Yeah.
if I remember rightly. Uh,
Mm.
in the second leg, I distinctly remember, I think Colin West scored. I actually think
I
I
think
made it crossing
Clive.
the top of a horse while it was on the pitch because of the violence that was taking place that day at
Yes.
Stamford Bridge. So, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
Spurs, we carried a little bit of luck down at their ground, of course, but we done a good job on them up here at Roker Park. Went to Spurs, beat them, then went down to Chelsea and beat them as well. So we beat all
Yep.
London sides on the way. We beat Watford,
Yes,
Crystal
you did.
Palace, or
You did.
Chelsea, Spurs. So the only team we didn't beat was the Norfolk side on the big day.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Clive Walker scored at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea in that semi-final.
Yes.
Ex-Chelsea player, of course. That didn't go down very well. I do remember. There was a lot of sadly, a lot of violence afterwards, wasn't there? And during, it was a tough day really, or
Both
tough
night
evening at
that
Stamford
night there
Bridge.
was
But
a lot of violence. The
yeah,
police and the referee actually said to us, go all at half time, right, when 5 minutes back was mad.
mm,
But he literally told us with mouth, if anybody looks at the middle of the halfway line to the dugout,
yep,
the game was taking place down that side of the pitch. And we had to obviously leave the pitch very, very quickly. Yeah. I
Yes,
remember rightly, I think they were
absolutely.
trying to turn our team bus over at one point.
Yep.
But that was
That's
back in the day
awful.
when it was all skinny and
Mm.
violent, Yeah, awful times. Yeah,
Yeah, it was an awful night, but a great result for you
yeah.
yourselves, and of course, sad one at Wembley against Norwich. But
Yes.
further disappointment awaited, of course, at the end
Yeah.
of the season when you said earlier that Sunderland were relegated. Strangely enough, though, alongside with Norwich City. So both the Milk Cup finalists went down that year. I mean, how did you feel at the time with the relegation? It's a shocking. Well, I know you mentioned earlier on a big problem for Sunderland going down. That really was, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, because Sunderland at one point, I mean, I remember speaking to Sammy Lee,
Mm,
trying to convince Sammy to come to Sunderland from Liverpool, which Sammy was all receptive to. Alan Kent eventually came, blah blah. So at the time, Sunderland were in the bit like they are now in the Premier League. We were sitting in a
yes.
great position,
Well,
around
we
about
are.
fifth or sixth in the. Yeah, absolutely. And the cup run started and the league form disintegrated, and
Mm,
that's exactly what happened. And but as you say, really, so yeah, two sides went down.
mm.
Norwich came up because I signed for Norwich when I left Sunderland at the end of my 2 years at Sunderland.
You did.
And I went and signed for Norwich, who were then back in the Premier League, or not Premier League, but Division One back in the day.
Division One.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
But as
yeah,
you
but
say, you did get a free transfer to Norwich City. And interestingly, choosing, and it goes back to how you choose and your decisions, choosing the Canaries over a similarly lucrative move to Sweden's IFK Gothenburg, who incidentally then went on to win the UEFA Cup. I mean, you must have had mixed feelings about that.
that's right. I had um, I had two or three very good opportunities. QPR, Jim Smith had got in touch with me.
Mm,
They offered me an incredible deal, financially incredible.
mm,
IFK Gotham was where, to be honest, he had gone out, and I felt that that might have been probably a move. I look back and think, should I have done it and wish I had of at the time.
yes.
But I got wind that Laurie Mack had some influence about me
Mm,
going to IFK Gothenburg, and I don't know if it was a reason to basically to get me out of English. I'm not too
yes.
sure. But anyway, the bottom line is I got wind of that. And that's the reason why I turned down IFK Gothenburg.
Right.
Then I also got wind that Laurie said, don't touch him. And I
Mm,
found that so hard to accept. So truthfully, I signed for Norwich for 1 year when I had agents at IFK at Gothenburg.
yes.
Incredible offer by Jim Smith at QB. Where, to be honest with you, had I gone there, Sammy Lee eventually turned up there, Michael
Mm,
Robinson turned up there.
mm,
So two lads who I knew super well and them both. So I probably at the time should have gone IE to QBR, but I
yes.
didn't. I chose Norwich out of sheer spite. And again, instead of following the head, I followed my heart and said, no, I'm going to go there and prove a certain person wrong. And
Mm,
when I look back, listen, the fact that I met Brian Gunn, who happens to be one of my closest friends in life to this day, then of
yes.
course I made a reasonably good decision on that front. But other than that, I made the wrong one when it came down to football.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I absolutely agree. And of course, after Norwich City, you transferred back to Middlesbrough on loan,
now we
then off to
lost.
Xerex Metz and Swansea City, making a total of 287 league appearances for 27 goals. So a great
Yeah.
career. A little bit of a journeyman at the end of your playing career, David, but I'm sure you enjoyed every moment. Some great memories too. I can believe.
So we'll rewind the clock. I
Yep.
never wanted to leave the borough, didn't want to go to Liverpool. But by the time I'd come out of contract at Norwich, truthfully, I just I just wanted to get away from English football.
Mm,
I'd lost some desire. I'd lost a purpose of wanting to achieve anything as such. And it was
yes.
only because that's just how I am as a human being and how I deal with people. So going off to Spain was a incredible experience. I mean, okay, great experience. One, I never got
Mm.
paid for 11 months, which wasn't particularly good. Secondly, I got stitched up because I actually thought I was signed for Cadiz and I wasn't. So hence I should have took an agent with me and I'd done my own deal. So that didn't go down too well. Three, being out there not getting paid for 11 months and then making the decision that do I play or not play? If you get your leg broken, the chances are you're not going to get your medicals taken care of. That was for sure. All those little things going on. So then I
Yes.
decided at the end of the 1 year in Spain, and I forget if I had another two clubs in Spain come after me at the time. I decided to return home.
Mm.
I was originally signing for Frank Burrows, who was my coach at Sunderland under Laurie Mack and under Len Asher-Stamiad. And
Right.
I was joining Frank again out of sheer one. I loved Frank to death. He's no longer with us, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly.
I was joining Frank basically to again give like Laurie Mack like a slap in the face in theory, because he was a guy who was at Sunderland during all of my time, but yet he
Mm.
was going out incredible lengths financially to get me to go and sign for Cardiff. Now, I'll tell you the truth. I was on my way. I was going out with a girl in Manchester at the time. The train broke down. I didn't make the press conference at Cardiff. So when Frank came to meet me at the station, or Jimmy Goodfella was Frank's assistant, came to meet me, who I knew very
Yes.
well, and said, "Look, the press conference is organised for tomorrow. Frank's going to come and see you in the hotel later on for something to eat and have a chat with you," which was great. So I missed
Mm.
this press conference, went to the hotel. Frank turns up. We were talking, and he said to the lady on reception, "Don't let any calls come through to him tonight." Blah blah blah. And I said, "Frank, there's only one call. I'm waiting for Brian Gunn to ring me," who was then my apartment partner. In theory, we lived in the same apartment as me together. And
Mm.
Gunny rang me and he said, "Right, the team that's been ringing, because this particular team had called to my house in Norwich for about 4 or 5 times, eventually confirmed who they are. They wouldn't say who they were." And he said, "It's Howard Wilkinson from Sheffield Wednesday." So
Right.
I told this to Frank at dinner that night. I said, "Oh, by the way, Chef Wed have been on, rang to Gunny, desperate they want me to go up there and meet them." Frank said, "You've got to go, Hodgie." I said,
Yes.
"Why?" He said, "Hodgie, you've got to go.
Yeah.
It's Chef Wed, they just got promoted, they just won the league, they were back in the top flight." He said, "You're only coming here because of me." I said, "Exactly." And we discussed blah, blah, blah. And then the next morning, taxi comes to collect me. And lady in reception rang up and said, "I forget, it was yesterday. Miss Hodgson, Frank has said, could you make sure that you pack everything because you're going to a different hotel?" I never gave it a second thought. Packed everything up, put everything in my case, went outside, had breakfast, taxi picked me up, and I'm thinking I'm off to the stadium at Ninian Park at Cardiff. And I
Mm.
actually signed for it. And I said to the taxi driver, "Excuse me, where are we going?" And he said, "Oh, I'm taking you to the train station." "Why?" "I'm going to Ninian Park. I'm signing." "No, no, my instructions take you to—" And I pulled up at the train station, and who's waiting for me? Frank Burrows.
Wow.
He walks up the taxi. I get out. He gives me a hug, and he said, "Right, listen, telephone now. You got to go and ring Howard. There's your train ticket. I've bought it for you, and you're going." And I stood for about 10 minutes and argued, and he said, "Audrey, I will not sign you at Cardiff. Just get on that train and go to Sheffield Wednesday." Now, that was at the time probably the worst thing that I thought was going to happen to me. But truthfully, 6 weeks later, I meet my wife. So for me, it was the best thing that could ever.
Wonderful story.
So what turned out to be what I thought was going to be something that would get me football life back on turned
Yeah.
out to be not the case, but to go to Sheffield and meet my wife, and for which case that was the best train delay I've ever had.
What a wonderful story. That's an absolutely incredible story, David, isn't it? And so you met your wife. I mean, you
Right,
can't get better than
36
that, can you?
years, still 36 years of marriage, still together, two amazing
Fantastic.
kids, and all that came about because a train broke down.
Some things are meant to happen, aren't they?
Well,
It's
yeah,
incredible, really.
that's how I look at it. Yeah, it was 100%. It was meant to be. Yeah.
It was meant to be, yeah, brilliant. And good luck to you both as well. I mean, it's a fantastic story. That really is a wonderful story. And then in 1995, you went on to manage Darlington Football Club, Darlow as I always know them as, in
Yes.
more than 400 matches. In fact, three spells as manager from 1995 through to 2006. I mean, how did you take to management and what was it like at Darlington?
It was crazy because there was a gentleman called Barry Gelder who was Kenny Dalglish's head of, well, not head recruitment, head scout, he was called back then. A
Yes.
wonderful guy who I knew. He was actually at the Borough when he got me to go from Norwich back to Borough on loan. So Barry was behind that. So he wanted to meet me at a Scotch Corner Hotel, famous hotel in the north here, to
Yes.
have a meeting with a young lad called Sean Gregan, who was then a young player at Dalton. I went to meet him at Scotch Corner, give this young boy Sean some advice about maybe signing a new deal at Dalton, etc., etc., etc. And then on the back of that conversation, the meeting with Barry, um, the chairman of Dalton, for some reason, had a conversation with Barry, and then I left Scotch Corner, got home, and I got a call from Barry. He said, "Listen, would you be interested in talking to Dalton Football Club?" And
Mm.
for what purpose? I said. He said, "As a manager." And it felt right. Even though my company I had
Yes.
at the time was doing so well, financially was incredible. I decided to go and have a meeting with Darlington Football Club. And I basically said, it wasn't arrogance, but I did not need that job. And I said, I ain't coming for an interview. You can offer me the job now, and I'll come up and I'll say to you, I'm taking it or I'm not taking it. It's not
Yep.
like it's me coming up and saying, Simon Stadenroad, I think, was in for the job at the time as well, one or two others. I said, I'm not coming up there, sitting down, talking to yous, and then yous make a decision and saying to me, no, it happening. I'm not doing that. I don't need to do it, and I'm not putting myself through that. So they basically offered me the job.
Hmm.
Um, and then, of course, I was due to go with Mark Proctor, who was my closest friend, or still is my closest friend. And he done a U-turn, Procky, and so I nearly did, and then in the end I accepted the role, and that was the commencement of my managerial career at Dalton. And it wasn't meant to be like that. I never intended to go into management. To tell you the truth, I had a great agency, but again, fate. It's crazy how things come around.
Oh, it is. Yes.
And of course, I end up starting what would be a love affair with Dalton Football Club, spanning 10 years or something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just wonderful. And of course, in 2004, you wrote a book titled Three Times a Quaker, the title of this podcast talk show, of course, and your world of football and passion for Darlington Football Club, which you've just expressed. Published by Speakeasy Publishing and actually voted in the top 25 North East managers of all time. It sounds like a great book to read, David.
Well, to be honest with you, the book came about mainly on the back of a very turbulent time with a gentleman called George Reynolds, who was then chairman of
Mm,
the Football Club owner, which we wouldn't have enough time to even bring all the conversation with George into this podcast I mean. But Ray Simpson, who was a local reporter here in the Northern Echo, big, huge, he's still involved with the club to this day.
mm,
Basically, he said, "Listen, have you ever thought about writing a book?" He said, because what you have gone through in
mm.
your time at this football club is probably never, ever going to be equaled and never be equaled by anybody else in football in terms of me and my fights with ownership, with owners of the clubs, winning
Yes.
battles I may add, and all the other things that took place during a very difficult time of the football club. And I thought about it, and we said, okay, we'll do it. I set up the Speakeasy Publishing was my company. I set that up as a
Hmm.
publishing company. And
Brilliant.
yeah, we set about doing the book. It took nearly 10 months. So Ray Simpson and Andrew Wilkinson, two gentlemen who were both reporters, would come to my house on a Monday. We'd go through the first chapter, whatever it may be, at the commencement of the book. They would come back on the Wednesday. We'd go through it. We'd change it where I didn't think was right or how it was come across.
Mm.
Come back on the Friday, sit down and agree to that chapter being correct. And then we went on to the next chapter and we did that for over a year. So the book, even though obviously I wrote it, when I did read it myself, didn't read the whole book myself, I mean, but when I looked at it, I it was me talking.
Yes.
It wasn't a book where somebody else writes it for you. It was my book. And the
Mm.
words in there were my words and how I wanted to put it across. So in a way, I was very, very happy with that. And that
Mm.
was one of the proudest moments of my life, even though, yes, I played at Wembley for my for Sunderland, my team I supported. Yes, I won European Cups. Yes, I represented my country. But the morning of the book launch, I had to go to Waterstones in Darlington. And the lady said, David, if you could come down for about maybe 9:15, we'll give you breakfast. And then we'd like to start around about 10:30 with the book signing. And I said, okay, no problem.
Nice.
I got there at 9 o'clock. 9:30, the lady come up. She said, David, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come down immediately because we've already got a huge queue outside. And I'm telling you, this was my wife, my two daughters.
Yes.
That was probably one of the proudest moments of my life.
Oh,
To come
well
down the
done. Good for
stairs
you.
and look and see a queue right out the door and hundreds of people waiting. And I
Mm.
signed the books and then about quarter, I had to get to the ground. I was manager of Don at the time. The police had to come and intervene because there was still hundreds wanting to get their books signed. And I had to make a promise that I would return the next day and go through it all again for the people that had been waiting for hours. And we sold
Wow.
in total, we printed 5,000 copies. We sold 5,000 within 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I went to reprint, done another 3,000 and we sold all 8,000 and they never found in the bargain bucket, which was like a great achievement.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
and the book at that point, I think someone did point it out to me on LinkedIn not long ago, a year or so ago, was voted number one book of whatever over a certain period of time in the whole UK. And Jeremy Clarkson was in second or third. The two ladies who were fashion girls, stroke interior designers, or something, they were number three book or something. So yeah, in a way, I was extremely proud of that. Very
Well,
proud of
you've got to be
that. Yeah,
proud of that. That's
I
absolutely
was.
amazing
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
Yeah, brilliant.
yeah,
I mean, that's just an incredible end, isn't it? Really, I suppose to many things with your football life to have finish up that book. And what a great book too. I mean,
yeah,
awesome,
yeah, yeah.
great stuff. Congratulations.
Very lucky.
Very lucky indeed. So, what is next in the world of law? Sorry, a world of David Hodgson. What's next on your
Well, to be
scope?
honest with you, my great passion in life has always been identifying players.
Yes.
And I'm not arrogant, but I'll say
No.
it, I'll probably, if I went to a game and there was another 10 scouts there, I'd probably pick the player who's the best player, who's going to be the one who will make it probably before the other nine will for sure. I did that
Yeah.
for 10 years for base soccer, which are now
Hmm.
CA base. I've identified some of the best kids that went on to play at the highest level.
Yes.
And I can tell you a true story. I remember going out to watch a tournament in Cascais in outside of Lisbon. I was in
Lisbon,
Lisbon
Portugal. Yeah.
to look at a young boy called Nicholas Norgren. Well, not to look at him, I'd actually recommended him to Middlesbrough, and Middlesbrough agreed to sign him, and he was playing this tournament at under 16. And I've gone out this particular tournament to see Nicholas play. And there was another kid who I really, really liked. Very selfish, I may add. Um, the guy who was with me was a guy called Angelo Martins, Portuguese agent, stroke ex-Benfica. He was with me, and I said, listen, we need to have a chat with this kid if we can. I said, this kid's got a chance. And he had a word, blah, blah, blah. And we agreed that we were going to meet this particular boy's father. And they wanted something like, it was, but the currency was the Scudos back in the time.
Mm.
I think it was something like 100,000 Scudos. So it can't be something like that. I remember ringing back to base soccer to Leon Angel, who was head of base. He owned the company. Said, Leon, listen, there's a kid here. If we pay let's say there was £25,000, but going back 20, 15 years ago, it's a lot of money. But if we pay this sum, we have the potential of representing this young boy, and I think he's got a great chance.
Mm.
And Leon declined on the back that I'd only seen this boy for 1 hour. Felt it was a lot of money to shell out for a young kid. And we didn't do it. And Nicholas went on to pay to go to Middlesbrough, signed. And the other boy, the young Portuguese kid, went on to have a decent career himself.
Yes.
He was called Cristiano Ronaldo.
There you go. I thought you were going to come up with that one.
Yeah.
Ah, what a
Oh,
story. That's just
but
incredible.
he was 15. He had just, I think, had just signed a contract at Sporting as a
Mm.
YTS, which would have been the case because at that age group, and that was the boy. And we didn't follow through with it. And
Oh, shame.
yeah. But listen,
Big
it's
mistake.
okay to say that now
Mm.
because it's who he is. But back then he was a 15-year-old boy or 16 coming up, and obviously my decision to say we should do it was solely based on the fact that this boy had amazing attitude, character. Technically,
Yes.
he was very good, very selfish. I mean, okay, there was no end product. There was no no assists in theory when he could have done it. I remember sort of vaguely remember how he played that day, but yeah. So that's what I
Brilliant.
do in life in theory. I help two young lads who have got a company here in the
Yeah.
northeast of England, SMI Group. I help them get started at the very, 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 very beginning of their journey. They now look after 150 plus players. I spend a
Nice.
couple of hours a week in their office. They give me 6, 7, 8 players to look at every time, and I'll say to them, yes or no.
Mm.
He's worth pursuing. He's not worth pursuing. So that's what I do during the day. I'm really, when I put this down now, I'll be watching the under 17 World Cup on their behalf. Yeah, that's my day job in theory.
That's good life, isn't it? It really
Yeah,
is a good life.
yeah, yeah.
Continue at it, David. It's fantastic. And I've just done a quick look at the clock here. We're well over, just over the hour, well, 6 or 7 minutes over the hour. So it's been that hour just disappears so quickly when you're having a great conversation. It really does. Can't believe it's gone so quickly.
But no,
But
wonderful. Listen, questions you asked, yeah, of course, they're relevant, and I hope the
yeah.
answers given to you or
Oh, perfect.
enjoyable for your podcast. But I've been really looking forward to. Obviously, I'll keep an eye. I'll see you on LinkedIn, of course.
Yeah.
We've had to cancel once or twice because of
Yes.
circumstances. But
Yep.
no, I'm so grateful, and I thank you for inviting me on for sure.
Oh, that's been a pleasure. Do you mind hanging on whilst I
Yes,
wrap up, David? We'll have a quick chat
absolutely.
afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank
As
you.
always on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show, we could talk forever, David. There's a lot more about your life in professional football, I'm sure, as a player, coach, manager, and director of sport, of course. It's been a huge pleasure, as always. And as always, the pleasure is all mine. And of course, the show's audience, when his podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show and the Lord Russell Baker YouTube channel. Thank you, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you David Hodgson a big round of
Thank you
applause,
so
David. It's
much.
been a wonderful
Pleasure.
having you on. Some great stories. There really are.
Thank you.
Anyway, the next episode on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show is Gordon the Guided Missile with Tim Stimpson, who is a former rugby union international fullback and occasional wing. During Tim's career, Tim played for Wakefield, West Hartlepool, Newcastle Falcons, Leicester Tigers, Perpignan, France of course, Leeds Tykes and Nottingham, plus more notably for England and the British and Irish Lions. As always, another great show to look forward to, and of course, exclusive on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the inside. So until then, it's au revoir from him and au revoir from me.